Software is everywhere, so do software developers. There are millions of them, and if you look near you, you may find a few of them. Despite this ubiquitous nature of software and availability of software developers, there is one harsh truth not many are willing to accept, but I am gonna make that point right now in this video. So, software development was, is, and in all probability till the singularity will remain an indeterministic problem to solve. Software development is an indeterministic problem to solve, and the more we are trying to make it deterministic by using some tools, tips, tricks, techniques, frameworks, the more we are creating dumb software developers. I'm sorry to say so. I'm extremely sorry to say so, but that's the reality. Let me tell you why I'm saying this. I wrote my first code in C language way back in 1994, and at that point of time, the software was less, software developers were less, and to a large extent, people in software development industry accepted the fact that they are dealing with an indeterministic problem. Okay, so we could determine what we want from our software, but how part remains indeterministic, and we accepted this fact. And the software developers at that point of time, and I do believe that a vast majority of software developers at that point of time would agree to me that they were their creative best because they had to use their mind like detectives to create some software. More than the skills, it's the mind they need to use, like what skill they should use to solve this problem. I'm not saying that skills were not necessary, they were necessary, but having a creative mind, intuitive mind, interrogative mind was a must to create a software at that point of time because there were limited examples on how to create a software, and everybody was doing so in the best possible way because they had their own freedom or creative freedom. And at that point of time, people were mostly worried about the outcome of your software development rather than software development itself. But when the area of influence of software started growing, we got many more software developers, and suddenly there were huge amount of people doing software development. So to properly evaluate and to have some kind of control in the software development for lots of valid as well as invalid reasons, people came up with lots of things, and all those things they were trying to do only one thing. They were trying to get rid of this indeterministic nature of software development and trying to bring in some kind of deterministic behavior to it. Not to mention that, in my opinion, most of them, if not all, have failed miserably. Software development, even after using all those things, is still an indeterministic problem to solve. Now, I'm not saying that those things are bad. I'm not saying that the way we were creating software earlier was the best way. No, there is always room for improvement. There is always a better way of doing something as well as a worse way of doing something. But the software developers on those days, they have created everything, pretty much everything, the base on which complete software works today, software development ecosystem works today. Think about Linux, think about TCP/IP protocols. We have sent rockets to the moon and beyond. So we were able to achieve the outcome. And I have no problem with the new improvements that is being suggested, but most often than not, these new ideas, new improvements, new ways is being projected to software development community by inserting a guilt feeling in them. I do believe that these things are better, okay, in some way or other, or at least in some situations, circumstances, they are better. Of course, they are better, and if they are better, we are going to accept that. People are going to accept that. You don't need to insert a guilt feeling in software developers saying that whatever way we were doing things, whatever our USP of doing things, whatever different way we were doing things, whatever you know tricks, tips and techniques used by different software developers, and whatever way people used to do the work in different continents, you need to feel guilty about that. because you were doing things in the absolutely wrong way. I'm not talking about the outcome, but the way you did was absolutely wrong, and we need to do something in a different way. And that different way was purely intended to insert deterministic behavior. Now think about it and see the results. After doing software development for approximately 27 years, I am convinced that the software development cannot be deterministic because there are hundreds of ways to do something. There are multiple better ways to do something, but if you have estimated a piece of work as half day work or 3 story point, believe me, that estimation was done considering the simplest possible way or worst way of doing something. If you do not believe me, just take a small survey within your organization. Take, a feature, a code snippet or set of function and ask the people who have developed those features, code snippets and function, is it possible to do this thing in a better way? And is it possible to do the same thing in the worst way? Of course, they will say that they can do this thing in a better way also, in a worse way also. But you will be surprised to know that when they talk about creating something in a better way, they will say that I could have made it 2 to 3 to 4, 5 times better. But when you talk about making the same thing in a worse way, they will say that okay, I can make it 10% worse or 20% more worse. That's what pretty much happens in my knowledge, and I'm not sure what will happen in your organization. But if you take a survey and if this is something that comes out, you need to understand that whatever I am saying holds some ground. Now, I am not saying that since something is an indeterministic problem, do it for ages. There is no need for estimation. There is no need for telling client when you are going to do something. I am not saying that. In fact, I have a different thought process or estimation, and I'm going to create one video on that at some later point of time. But what I want to say that, instead of asking deterministic nature in each and every small piece of things, you can get roughly deterministic behavior in the overall outcome you want. As a very simple example, I can tell you that if you are driving from point A to point B in Google Maps, your Google Map only says that you will reach point B at this time. And in some way or other, there are some deviation, but you reach around that time. Okay. Also, even if you are doing things in software, do things in the similar way, it's not necessary that you will end up writing same set of code or you can replicate the code as it is. The biggest wrong thing which we are trying to do today is that to determine every kilometer time, that for every mile or every kilometer this should be my deterministic behavior. And that was not there 15-20 years back. 15-20 years back, we were more concerned about the outcome because we accepted the indeterministic nature of this thing. And that's what we should do even today if we want our software developers to create things in a relatively better way by applying their thought process, by applying their mind, and by applying their skill sets. You cannot apply your mind, apply your intuitive minds in the deterministic problems. Just like if you are going to an ATM and you're withdrawing money, you will not apply your brain. You will do set of things and that's all, right? That's a deterministic thing. Software developers should be outcome driven. Okay, their job is to make sure that they get the outcome. All those big corporations, let's talk about Google. They used to give 1 day out of 5 days for individuals to do work on their own projects, right? And some of the bright and brightest software developers are amazing when they are focused on the outcome, not on the deterministic nature of the path you are taking to achieve that outcome. We are spending our time, we are spending our energy in solving a problem which, in my personal opinion, need not to be solved but being accepted as a constraint in software development. And of course, you can disagree with me. So that's all I had for today. Thank you all. Thanks for watching. We will meet again. Until the next time we meet, good day, goodbye. You take care.